Human-God hybrids. The story is written in the book of Genesis, and it happened before the flood. It says that the sons of God saw that human women were beautiful, took them as wives, and had children with them. These children were called the Nephilim. They were described as mighty men, warriors, and people of great reputation. That is all the text gives us, and somehow that makes it even stranger. Who were the sons of God? This is where things get interesting. Many ancient Jewish readers believed they were angels who crossed a boundary they were never meant to cross. In this view, angels left their proper place, mixed with humans, and produced something unnatural. Other readers, especially later ones, argued that the sons of God were powerful human rulers, or the godly line of Seth, while the women came from a corrupt human line. The Bible indicates that this story takes place before the flood, suggesting that something may have existed in the pre-flood world that disappeared after the flood. Jonah and the big fish. Jonah was a prophet, someone who spoke for God. God told him to go to Nineveh and warn the people that their wickedness was going to bring judgment. Jonah wanted nothing to do with it. These were Israel's enemies, and he definitely didn't want them getting forgiven. So instead of going, he ran the other way, got on a ship, and tried to get as far away as humanly possible. Then this massive storm hits. The sailors are freaking out, praying to their gods, throwing cargo overboard, doing everything they can think of. Jonah knew it was his fault. He told them to throw him into the sea, and when they did, the storm just stopped. Here's where it gets weird. God sent a giant fish to swallow Jonah whole. He spent 3 days and nights inside that thing. In the darkness, he finally prayed. He admitted he was scared, guilty, and needed mercy. The fish then vomited him out onto dry land. God told Jonah again to go to Nineveh. This time he listened. The people actually heard him out. They repented, and God spared the city. Other mysterious resurrections. At the moment Jesus died, something very strange is said to have happened. Matthew writes that the ground shook, and rocks and tombs were opened. When this happened, many people who had already died were raised to life. Matthew says that after Jesus rose, they came out of their tombs, went into Jerusalem, and were seen by many people. The Bible does not tell us their names. It does not tell us how long they stayed alive or what they said. It simply calls them holy ones, meaning faithful people who had trusted God before they died. This was not the same kind of resurrection as Jesus. Jesus rose never to die again. These people were more like Lazarus, brought back to life for a time, then disappearing from the story without explanation. Matthew's point is to show that their resurrection was a sign of Christ's victory over death and a confirmation of his identity as the Messiah. Exceedingly long lifespans. The early chapters of Genesis have some of the strangest numbers you'll find anywhere in the Bible. People are living for hundreds of years. Adam supposedly lived to 930. His son Seth made it to 912. Enosh hit 905. Then there's Methuselah, the record holder at 969 years. This raises an obvious question. How were they even counting years back then? Some people think maybe they used lunar years based on moon cycles, which would make the ages way shorter when you convert them. Others point out that doesn't really work because the Bible also mentions ages when these guys had kids, and those numbers get absurdly young if you shrink them that way. Most honest scholars will just tell you time was counted differently, and we don't fully understand how. What really matters is what these numbers are trying to say. These massive lifespans belong to a time right after creation, before the flood, when life is described as less broken. As the story continues, lifespans start dropping, and now most people don't even make it to 100, which leads to another question. What happened? Where did we go wrong? Why don't we live as long as they did? Let me know, what do you think about this? Moses' horns. In Exodus, Moses comes down from Mount Sinai after meeting with God and receiving the covenant. His face looks different. Something's happened to him. Most modern Bibles say his face was shining or radiant. People were scared to get near him, so Moses had to cover his face with a veil. But here's the strange part. The Hebrew word used there is Qaran, and it doesn't show up anywhere else in the Bible. Since it's so rare, translators basically had to guess what it meant. Many went with shining, because it sounds spiritual and safe. There's another interpretation though. Qaran is really close to the Hebrew word Karen, which means horn. If you take that meaning seriously, the text might actually be saying Moses came down the mountain with horns growing out of his head. This wasn't some crazy idea invented later. Ancient Jewish readers knew about this interpretation. Medieval Christian scholars believed it too. That's exactly why Michelangelo's famous statue of Moses shows him with horns. The artist wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He was following what the text was understood to mean at that time. Gnarly vision. Ezekiel's visions are among the wildest scenes in the entire Bible. When you think of prophets, you probably imagine calm guys delivering clear messages from God. Ezekiel was not that guy. He was a priest who got dragged into exile in Babylon, far from Jerusalem, far from the temple, far from everything that made sense in his faith. It's out there, by some river, that his visions start happening. Ezekiel sees the sky rip open. Out of this storm come 4 creatures. Each one has 4 faces: human, lion, ox, and eagle, all at once. They've got wings that touch each other and feet like polished bronze. They move without turning, going straight ahead wherever the Spirit sends them. Next to them are these wheels within wheels, covered completely with eyes, spinning in every direction simultaneously. Above all this is something that looks like a throne, and sitting on it is this glowing figure surrounded by fire and light. Ezekiel falls flat on his face. He knows he's seeing the glory of God. These visions are bizarre, but they're not random. Ezekiel's showing that God isn't stuck in a building somewhere. Even in exile, even when everything's chaos, God's still alive, still moving, still watching. Difficult matchmaking. In Genesis, God brings all the animals to this human called Adam and has him name them. The text says this happens before a partner gets made for Adam. He names them one by one, but none of them are suitable. Then God creates Eve. Seems straightforward, right? But things get interesting when you look closely at the word Adam. In Hebrew, Adam doesn't always mean a male person. It can mean a human being in general, or even humanity as a whole. Some scholars think the first human wasn't clearly male or female initially, but a single human form that later became 2 people. In that reading, Eve isn't a second creation. She's a separation. Another common view says humanity started with just 2 people, Adam and Eve, plain and simple. This is the version most people hear growing up, and it fits the story cleanly. Still, the text leaves gaps that never get explained. One of those gaps shows up with Cain. After he kills his brother Abel, Cain gets sent away to the land of Nod, east of Eden. There, the story just casually mentions Cain takes a wife. The Bible never explains where she came from. Isn't it strange how the text just lets that question hang there? Balaam and his talking donkey. Balaam was a diviner, basically a guy who blessed and cursed people for money. He wasn't an Israelite prophet, but people believed his words had power. When Israel camped near Moab, King Balak got nervous. Instead of attacking, he sent for Balaam and asked him to curse Israel. Balaam said he'd ask God first, which sounds good, but his heart was already leaning toward that reward money. God let Balaam go, but told him he couldn't just say whatever he wanted. On the journey, an angel stood in the road to block him. Balaam couldn't see the angel, but his donkey could. The donkey turned away, crushed Balaam's foot against a wall, and finally just laid down. Balaam got angry and started beating the animal. Then the weird thing happened. God opened the donkey's mouth and it spoke. It asked why it was being beaten, and reminded Balaam it had always been faithful. Only after that did Balaam's eyes open. He saw the angel standing there with a sword drawn and realized the donkey had just saved his life. 2.5 million people leaving at once. The book of Exodus says the Israelites left Egypt all at once, and the numbers are absolutely wild. Around 600,000 men on foot, not counting women and children. When you add families, elderly people, and mixed groups that tagged along, you're looking at something like 2 to 2.5 million people walking out together. These were former slaves. For generations, they'd lived under forced labor, building cities and working fields for Pharaoh. Their lives were controlled, their freedom taken away. Then, after a series of plagues that broke Egypt's will, Pharaoh finally let them go. They left in one massive movement, carrying children, animals, and whatever belongings they could grab. This is where it gets strange. Imagine 2.5 million people moving without buses, maps, or phones. No modern roads, no supply trucks, just families walking into the wilderness. The Bible says they left so fast their bread didn't even have time to rise. Some readers struggle with these numbers. Scholars debate whether they're exact counts or ancient ways of describing a huge crowd. The burning bush. This happens in Exodus. At this point, Moses isn't a prophet yet. He's not a leader. He's just a shepherd watching sheep in the desert. He used to live live in a palace in Egypt, but now he's out here hiding after killing an Egyptian. Then he notices the bush. Moses sees that the bush is on fire, but it's not burning up. That alone is weird enough. When he gets closer, a voice calls his name. It tells him to stop and take off his sandals. The ground is holy, not because it looks special, but because God is right there. God tells Moses who he is. He doesn't give some long elaborate name, he just says, I am. It means God isn't created and doesn't depend on anything else. He simply exists. Then God gives Moses a task. Go back to Egypt and lead the Israelites out of slavery. Moses is terrified. He asks questions, makes excuses, doubts himself. God doesn't pretend Moses isn't weak. Instead, he promises to be with him. And he keeps that promise. It leads to the Israelites leaving Egypt. The Spies. When we hear about the spies of Canaan, we usually think about fear. But first, it helps to remember who these guys were and why they got sent. After leaving Egypt, the Israelites were standing at the edge of a new land. God told Moses to pick 12 men, one from each tribe, to go explore Canaan. They walked through the land for 40 days. What they saw was strange and overwhelming. The land itself was rich and alive, flowing with food. They cut down a single cluster of grapes so huge it had to be carried on a pole between two men. There were figs and pomegranates everywhere. By every measure, the land was good, exactly what had been promised. But they also saw things that terrified them. The cities were big and heavily fortified. The walls were massive. The people were strong. Some were described as giants, descendants of Anak. Compared to them, the spies said they felt like grasshoppers. Fear changed how they talked. 10 of the spies focused only on the danger. They said the land would destroy them and convinced everyone that moving forward meant death. 2 men saw the exact same land and told a completely different story. Joshua and Caleb didn't deny the strength of the cities or the size of the people. They just believed God was stronger. The Tower of Babel. According to Genesis 11, after the flood, all humans spoke one language and lived in one place. Instead of spreading out across the earth like they were supposed to, they decided to stay put. They said, let's build a city with a tower that reaches the heavens, so we can make a name for ourselves. Their fear was pretty simple. They didn't want to be scattered. They wanted control, safety, and fame. The Bible says God came down to check out the city and the tower. That detail already tells you something important. No matter how high humans build, God isn't impressed. God then confused their language so they couldn't understand each other anymore. The project fell apart. The people scattered across the earth. The place got called Babel, which sounds like the Hebrew word for confusion. Many scholars think this story is mainly about human pride. In the ancient world, towers like this were called ziggurats, temple towers meant to connect heaven and earth. Scholars believe the builders weren't literally trying to climb into the sky, but to pull God down and control religion, power, and unity on their own terms. The problem wasn't building a city. The problem was trying to replace trust in God with trust in human strength. Other scholars also point out this story explains why the world has so many different languages and cultures. It's not presented as punishment out of anger, but as a limit placed on human arrogance. That limit was actually God's wisdom, preventing humanity from destroying itself. Daniel's dreams. In the book of Daniel, we're told Daniel had visions both while sleeping and while awake. Visions packed with beasts, statues, horns, and heavenly scenes. The Bible presents these as messages from God, not riddles meant to show off, but warnings and explanations about power, kingdoms, and time. One of the most famous is the dream of the great statue. A king named Nebuchadnezzar dreams of this massive human figure made of different materials. Its head is gold, chest and arms are silver, belly is bronze, legs are iron, and feet are this weird mix of iron and clay. Then a stone, not cut by human hands, strikes the statue and destroys it completely. Daniel explains that each part represents a kingdom, starting with Babylon. The statue shows that human empires rise and fall, getting weaker as they go, even when they look strong on the outside. Later, Daniel has his own vision of terrifying beasts coming out of the sea. The Bible says these beasts also represent kingdoms, but this time they appear as wild animals instead of metals. The message stays the same. Human power, when left unchecked, becomes violent and unstable. Scholars generally agree these visions are symbolic, not literal predictions of monsters or statues. The Seven-Headed Dragon. The story of the seven-headed dragon is recorded in Revelation 12. The chapter opens with a woman clothed with the sun. The moon is under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars sits on her head. She's pregnant and crying out in pain as she's about to give birth. Then another sign appears. This time it's a huge red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. Each head has a crown on it. With its tail, the dragon sweeps a third of the stars from the sky and hurls them to the earth. It stands in front of the woman, ready to devour her child the second the child is born. The child is born, and described as one who will rule all nations with an iron rod. The child gets taken up to God, and the woman flees into the wilderness where God protects her. Then war breaks out in heaven. Michael and his angels fight the dragon. The dragon loses and gets thrown down to earth. The Bible is crystal clear here. The dragon is Satan, the ancient serpent, the deceiver of the whole world. Scholars agree this chapter is symbolic. Revelation belongs to apocalyptic literature, a style that uses vivid images to explain spiritual truth. Many scholars think the woman represents Israel, since Israel gave birth to the Messiah. Others see her as Mary, or as God's people as a whole. The 12 stars are often linked to the 12 tribes of Israel. The child is widely understood to be Jesus. The dragon's many heads and crowns are usually read as symbols of oppressive empires and political power, especially the Roman Empire.